there were visual signs, like I was becoming more isolated. They should have noticed that. I was experiencing sadness and, like I said, physiological illnesses that were very obvious. In fact, my white blood count was so low, it was a 2.3, which is, they almost hospitalized me. They thought I might have cancer or some other really serious problem. And they were well aware of these challenges, and yet, even though I was so compromised, I did not receive compassion. And victims more than ever need to experience connection, warmth and connection and compassion. But I think that they felt they were showing me compassion. I think they felt that by forcing me to comply to what they believed were the right ideals, that was compassionate towards our marriage. But in fact, compassion is not, how do I say this? For a victim, it's a defined set of behaviors. It's not subjective. Compassion, and to help victims heal, needs to be a good listener, someone who listens over and over again, that doesn't put a time frame like you have 15 minutes, but no, however long it takes for the victim to process what they're experiencing, because often they're so confused that they need to talk through what they're experiencing to provide clarity, to gain clarity. And then we talk about this at the Men Project, our healing model of compassion. It starts with listening, and then the next is to accept, believe the story to be true. If you come from a stance where you don't believe, which happens to so many victims, it's just human nature to not believe, to think that they're maligned in some way. But really, only 3% of victims, studies show, have been shown to not be telling the truth. So, particularly when it's not in a court setting. So if somebody comes to you interpersonally, like in your relationship or at your church, they are wanting help. And so in that case, it's important to believe the story to be true. And then the next is to validate them. Say you have every reason to feel this way. Validate what you hear and validate their personhood, validate their perspective. And then we say, identify, find your parallel experience. So you might say, gosh, what you're telling me reminds me of something I experienced in college and it was so upsetting. So I can only imagine what you must be going through. But don't say, well, let me tell you about me and hijack the conversation. Just briefly identify, which shows the speaker, the victim, that it's another tool to prove you're really listening. And then we encourage. We encourage them on their path. I will be with you. I know you're going to get through this. You're a good person, and God's going to find your way through, and you're going to find your way through. How can I help you? That's one of the last things. We say, ask one question. Don't ask, well, have you thought about this? Well, why didn't you do that? Or could you have done this better? Don't ask any questions. Only ask one question. How can I help you? Is there something I can do to help you in this process? Can I find you resources? Can I attend a meeting with you if you need to talk to your attorney? I'll help you. I'll go with you to help you. If you're traumatized and are struggling telling your story, I can validate your story. You ask just one question. And then the last thing we say in our healing model of compassion is to grieve. Allow the person to grieve. I remember just being in a heap of tears, and I didn't receive an arm around my shoulder. I didn't receive somebody holding my hand. They were quick to want to just dismiss my tears, like as if my tears were an annoyance. But allow the person to process through the grieving. And if even better, grieve with them, because there's no deeper connection than when you grieve with someone and allow them to experience this, either the grief of what they're about to lose or of what they've lost. It's very significant, and it's worthy of the space to process that in the grieving process. Ultimately, what I would attribute most to my healing was the fact that I had, outside of that group, I had a couple of really good girlfriends that were absolutely encouraged me, spent time with me, would take a walk once a week with me. I didn't burden anybody with daily phone calls. It would have been nice to have my Bible study friends share in that process while I was uncovering and moving through the experience, but I didn't have that, so I felt very lost. So the couple of friends that I trusted, that caused me to feel very guarded and not trusting of other people. So I was really blessed by the fact that I had two really solid friends that helped me. I also read a lot of books about abuse. And so what I would say is that gaining clarity of my experience, really being able to put a name to the behaviors I was experiencing, to gain the emotional language to define what I was experiencing brought me clarity, and clarity began to reduce my post-traumatic stress symptoms. Clarity is what validated my experience and let me know that I am not crazy, I'm not making this up. Like, I am every reason to be traumatized and upset by these experiences. So clarity is one of the first necessary steps to healing. And that's why we provide definitions and names and definitions of covert emotional abusive behaviors on our website, because so many victims have said it's been very healing. And then I also found an excellently trained trauma therapist who was also trained in abuse and really spoke a lot of affirmation and just helped me process what I was going through and really support me when I needed that kind of solid support, because you can't play neutral. And there's no moral justification for taking a neutral stand in an abusive situation. You need to take the side of the victim, absolutely. And so many people want to look the other way because it requires something of them. They don't want to speak about the unspeakable. And the last thing is I really delved into the Word, and God just was soothing me with amazing scriptures that let me know that I was lovable, that Jesus loved me, and that I deserved to be treated better. There's one verse that comes to mind, Ephesians 5:12-13, which says to bring all matters into the light, even the unspeakable, because that which is illuminated can then become light. And I think we need to speak the unspeakable so that the stigma is removed and so that victims can actually experience healing support and connection, because they cannot heal in isolation. I could not heal in isolation. I needed to educate myself. I needed support. I needed to know that I was loved. And so I also reached out to a new community of friends who were unconditionally supportive, and that brought me so much healing. We need, God, there's a relationship we have with God, but then there's a relationship we have with others. And we need to fill up our arms with others to reciprocate and to give and to receive support from one another. And that's something particularly that victims need, and what I needed and what helped me heal. That's all the time I have right now, but next time I will tell you the rest of my story.